Hello, thanks for tuning in to our first episode of the Himalayan Coffee Talk Show. My name is Ngawang, I'll be your host, and today we have Miss Sapana Sakya, and I'd like her to introduce herself. I think she'd do a much better job about that, and welcome.
Hi everyone, hi Ngawang, thanks for having me. I am originally from Nepal, from Patan, but I grew up in Bangkok. I moved there when I was 5 with my family. And I came to the U.S. for undergraduate studies. I was in the Midwest at Purdue University, and then I came out to graduate school here at Berkeley in '96, and essentially have been based out here in the Bay Area ever since. My background is in journalism. I was a writer at the Bangkok Post newspaper for several years. And at grad school, I did a master's in journalism and concentrated more on documentary film. And so that's been my recent experience.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And just wanted to start this talk off. What makes you Asian American? Your identity? Where does that sprout from?
Yeah, that's a good question. If you are from some part of Asia to begin with, and now living in the U.S., you're considered Asian American. At least that's my understanding. But I think, for somebody to consider themselves or own that identity, there's a whole process. Because I think, for a long time, I considered myself just Nepalese, but living in America.
Absolutely.
I feel like, once I started working at CAAM, and because of the first series that I started working on, was about identity, was about, kind of discovering this contemporary Asian American identity. It definitely pushed me to think in those terms.
How did the events lead to you being interested in CAAM or being affiliated with them?
Well, I've always been interested in, I think, cultures that are in between, and not just one thing, because I feel like, everyone is really multifaceted. It's not you're not just one thing, but especially communities that are perhaps recently migrated and decided to call a different place home, right? What makes them American? What makes them Tibetan, Nepalese, Bhutanese, whatever it is their origin was,
yes.
Right? And can they be both? Do you have to forsake one for the other? I sometimes experience, like in different social environments, where I'm perceived as being either too American,
okay,
or not American enough, or, I've never been accused of being too Nepali, actually.
Okay.
But, are not Nepali enough, right?
So let me just, so do you face an identity crisis, or do you feel judgment when you are in your own, like, in our Nepali community? What's your...
Definitely. Nepal itself is so multicultural. There's so many different ethnic groups,
Absolutely.
Right? And now the population here in the Bay Area of Nepalis in the U.S. is so massive that every little community has their own little enclave. I totally love that you are proud and want to preserve your language and culture.
There's a very tribal element.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or I think that's really cool. And I love that part of, having those groupings there and available for younger generations, for myself, my kids. But at the same time, I feel like it sometimes can be very exclusive.
Okay.
Right?
Well, I wasn't trying to take this conversation on the because we all love our community, and
yes.
Ms. Sapana is doing this, having this conversation with us because she's proud to be Asian American, if anything.
It is interesting. I've always, we, and I say we because I feel like Nepalese, Tibetan, Bhutanese have a certain placement in that, I guess South Asian continent, in the subcontinent, where we're not Indian, we're not Chinese, but we're associated with one or the other a lot, right?
It's a very hybrid mix, but I don't want us to get bogged down in this part here. I just real quick, what would you say is a utopian sense of our community as an Asian American being from Nepal? By the way, I'm from Nepal too, and been in America for 13 years, and she's been here since '96. We were talking earlier. So if you could just what would be an ideal sense of community, and what
under the Asian American umbrella?
Absolutely, and also what purpose can we give to our community, to a utopian purpose? So if there was one,
I don't know if there's an ideal Asian American community or sensibility. I mean, what we have to be is able to hold, the unique and the very specific, right? Like language, culture, religion, all of those things within the common ground of being from a certain part of the country, of the globe, of the world, right? Nepalese communities, Tibetan or Bhutanese who are here kind of just in the last couple of generations. We don't have that history that the Chinese, Vietnamese, Japanese, or even the Southeast Asian communities
why do you think so?
Because they've been here, I mean, for example, for the Chinese, they've been here for 4 or 5 generations, right?
Absolutely.
And I think they have a certain history in this country that we don't necessarily have.
Yes.
And therefore, I mean, even in the creation of this Asian American identity, it happened kind of in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where communities started to come together, taking a cue from like the civil rights movement in the African American communities and others, to say that, we are also a people of color, different from the African American, different from the Latino community or the Native community, but also an entity, and we have a voice, right? And so they were trying to collectively find, I think, power in that unity to articulate a specific story, specific needs and issues, I think, under that Asian American umbrella. And that's what, that's how the Asian American identity, I think, was created here in the U.S.
Sure.
So, I mean, being a very recent immigrant, like first, second generation, we don't necessarily have that history here in the U.S.
We sure do not, yes.
Yeah, but I think slowly, as like my kids were born here and their generation is, trying to figure out who they are, what is my identity, right? So they're part Nepalese, but they're part American. My husband is from here.
Well, can I just say that it's tough for us to get somewhere when we don't know what our destination is, right? So I think that which begs the question, what is something that we are striving towards? Are we trying to...
Why should we consider ourselves Asian American?
Are we trying to be like the Chinese community, or trying to be like the African American community, and that so that they can mobilize, they have a strong sense of... I think that separates a movement from just being
just an identity.
Absolutely. So how can we mobilize around that? So do you think, like your kids growing up here, do they have something that they should be striving towards?
That's interesting. I'm not sure, there's a goal. I think it's very personal.
Absolutely.
So it's more about how you identify. I mean, you don't ever have to identify as Asian American to be considered Asian American.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you would, for example, I mean, when you're filling out a census form, do you check, Asian American or just Asian?
Sometimes there's no Asian American.
Sometimes there's no Asian American.
Like, absolutely, check my Asian, and I'm proud to be like, and Asian American.
Yeah. So, I think it's not, like a club where you have to do certain things to gain membership.
Of course not.
But, speaking as like somebody who works at a national Asian American organization, I think that is part of the journey of being Asian American. Is every community has its own like process of figuring out, where they came from, who they are, who they want to be in this new home.
True.
Essentially. And I think that's what makes this country in particular so unique, right?
Sure does.
Because it has a history of welcoming immigrants from so many different places. and considering them, American or part of this country, which doesn't exist, I will say, in a lot of Asian countries, that are
Absolutely
very
not.
homogenous.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you can never be Japanese or Chinese or whatever. Even Korean. Like they have generations
you can,
of...
but it'd be super fringe.
Right.
Yeah, but, it's not as accepting as contemporary American society. Absolutely.
Right. Or at least the ideal of the contemporary.
Yes, absolutely not.
Multicultural American.
It's like when in Rome, you have to. In America, you don't have to be in America. You can have your own identity.
Yeah, you can be a specific type. I think that's very valuable. I mean, so growing up in Thailand, I had this dilemma as a young kid as well. I mean, I went to an international school, so all of my friends were from all over the place, but we were in Thailand, and we were not Thai, right? But we're not, completely one thing or the other. So I think, I've had this sort of discussion in my head for a long time.
What motivates you? And for your kids, of course, I think in a deep level, all we do is for our kids and our future generations, and so that we can give them the best opportunity or even to self-actualize them for themselves.
Right.
So on that note, what is why have you involved yourself with CAAM and tying this all together? I know it's a big
No, I think
context, but yes.
I work at CAAM because I believe media is very powerful and important. Media representations really affect how you see yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you don't see yourself reflected in the popular landscape, right, of television, news, etc., movies, then you don't necessarily, you don't always see yourself being certain things. Like if you didn't see like an Asian American or an Asian female, doctor growing up on television or whatever. Like all these images that you see have to have reflections of all kinds of people, not just one particular type of person.
Absolutely.
I know growing up in Thailand, I always wished I was Thai.
Can I just say, I don't think Asian females have a problem with being portrayed as doctors, more as sex symbols, I would say. Because we're more already considered intelligent and going earlier about the high IQ.
No,
and,
but I think even that...
And that's a stereotype, of course.
Yeah.
But please, go ahead.
The Asian male-female portrayals are very different.
Absolutely. And the men are not given our fair due. Oh, I can go on and on, right? A superhero movie. Where's our Asian superhero movie? There isn't one.
There's one coming, actually.
There is. What is... Oh, it's a TV show. I know that, too.
There's a TV show and there's a film, I think, in the works.
What film is this?
I don't know, actually, but
It's like my mission to put...
No, but then, okay, so here's a question. Is that the goal, right? Let's say for everyone to have a superhero movie, because you brought that up, is that the ultimate goal? I don't know, maybe. Everyone was very excited about Crazy Rich Asians, for example.
I was not, and I still am not. And there's actually a really cool Netflix movie, Hello Peril, that is way better, and that actually represents us so much better.
No, it's called Always Be My Maybe, and the band is called
That
Hello
is
Peril.
the movie.
Yes.
I really enjoyed it, and they repped the Bay right.
Yes. Yeah, it's a very Bay Area focused film with Ali Wong and I forgot the guy's name now. He was from Fresh Off the Boat.
Yes.
Randall Park. Yeah.
Sorry,
I totally understand, and I think even just on the representation level, you want to go beyond the stereotypes, right? Beyond the math nerd or the sex symbol for women or, all of those things, and have characters be able to be multifaceted.
Absolutely.
Right, and deeper and all of that.
What would you like to see more from in the Asian, like in Asian American films? How we portrayed? What's lacking? If you wanna. Yeah,
no, I think there's always been a really robust independent film community, Asian American and very specific, Chinese American, Vietnamese, blah blah blah, and you go on and on. But it's never been at the mass level, right? Like the Crazy Rich Asians phenomenon type thing.
That was a blockbuster.
That was
for
a huge
us.
blockbuster.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's a goal. Like it's not very specific. It's a mission, right? I mean, the reason I work at CAAM is because I am wholeheartedly behind the mission of the organization, which is...
Well, yeah, what is the mission of the organization?
The mission of CAAM is to represent the richness and diversity of the Asian American experience.
We need to flesh that out more, please.
Yeah, the richness and diversity of the Asian American experience, and also support the perspective of Asian American storytellers, right? And be able to have that be accessible to the broadest audience possible is in our mission. And we do that by funding, by producing, by distributing, exhibiting works by and about Asian Americans.
Yes. Sorry, please. You're not done.
No, and then, so I think, you asked about, how do you want this media landscape to look like, essentially, for the younger generations. I want them to be able to see themselves. I want them to be able to imagine all kinds of possibilities.
Absolutely.
Right? Of their lives going forward. Not be restrictive, not be whatever it is by ethnicity or identity, but that, you are as important as every other individual that's, widely represented in the media here in the U.S. And I think, it's a mission that has taken a lot of time. CAAM has been around almost 40 years now.
Okay.
And things have changed drastically from 1980 when it first started. But
can I ask how's the representation in CAAM? Are there more Nepali, Tibetans, Indian people, or is it just mostly like Chinese or Japanese?
You mean
or
at
Koreans?
the organization?
Yes.
Well, the organization itself, I would say, there's a mix. I'm one of 2 South Asians at the organization at the moment. And then there's Chinese American, Japanese American, Filipino American.
Like Sri Lanka and like elsewhere. Asia is big, and I feel a lot of times, because I walk down the street and I get Korean or Japanese. That's not just Asia. There's so many other Asians out there.
Right.
And by the way, I'm not trying to. This is not going into tribalism. That's not my point. But I'm just saying.
Well, that has been the definition of Asian American, or that's been the sort of. That's been what everyone thinks is Asian American, is East Asian. So sure. Chinese, Japanese, Korean, right? And I think that the Asian American umbrella is wider and has been inclusive. I feel like the organization has been inclusive, but in the way that other people consume content that's Asian American, like with Crazy Rich Asians, it was all
so Hollywood
Chinese.
Yeah, I'm going to go on and on about that. Don't get me started.
Right.
Just the lead actor he was not Asian to me. He was more British.
Right, he's mixed race.
But I think he identifies more as British than Asian. And by the way, I have nothing against... I'm not trying to be this super Asian nationalist over here. I'm in America. I love being American. In fact, I think, Crazy Rich Asians, was a fun blockbuster film that a lot of people were able to watch and enjoy, absolutely.
Right? Which I think is great on that level. But then if you look at the... just beneath the surface, it's not really an American story. It's except for the main character, the woman who was Asian American.
Absolutely.
Everyone else is Singaporean Chinese.
Yes.
Right? So not really an Asian American story except for the main character.
Absolutely.
And I had some issues with the portrayals of other communities in Singapore, like the Sikh community or Indian Singaporean and the Malay Singaporean. It was problematic because they were representing the uber rich, right?
Can we just boil down? I think it is because at the end of the day, that movie was not made for. It was under the guise of, I would argue, under the guise of Asian empowerment. It was actually just made to earn money. It was about the bottom line, and they could make them, and they made a lot of money. They succeeded in that, but they used that platform to. I think they duped us into thinking, we should go support. And as opposed to actually empowering. But it's still great that there is something. So I don't want to be all super critical about it.
On the other hand, right? I mean, I think that there is a space there for Crazy Rich Asians. If you look at like Hollywood, the last big film like that was Joy Luck Club, and that was 25 years ago.
Okay. Yes.
It's a Wayne Wang film.
Okay.
And there shouldn't be like 25 years in between one Hollywood blockbuster and another. That's Asian American, right? I mean, there's been so many great independent films that are Asian American.
I put Harold and Kumar over. They did more for us than Crazy Rich has ever done. At least people will boom, Harold and Kumar, and we have that cool factor going for us. We have something in the
something that's different from the stereotype.
We're
I agree.
Physics, but excuse me, I love physics, by the way. So maybe another we're just in computer science or something like that. That's all we can do.
Right. I mean, I think these all have a role to play in breaking stereotypes, in expanding the vision of what an Asian American person is.
Absolutely.
Right? It's not just one or the other. It's not just the stereotype.
So also let me. So we talked about the bottom line, and I think that's another big issue is funding for big Asian. Say even if there are more and more scripts coming out for Asian American communities and actors. Is Hollywood funding it, or is there a secure source of funding? So, what are your thoughts on funding?
Well, I mean, our organization funds mostly documentaries, so nonfiction, not the fiction film world.
Sure.
And we're public television, mission driven. So all of our documentaries have to be on public television. But on the entertainment side, in terms of fiction films, I think there's definitely an uptick in funders financing Asian American content. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not, working in that arena of fiction film content, but we're very closely, watching what kinds of Asian American projects are out there and surfacing, like Always Be My Maybe, for example.
That's
on Netflix.
Film. I really enjoyed that movie.
I like that one too. But the popularity of all these Asian American comics on Netflix, I think Netflix is playing a huge role in increasing the popularity of Asian content.
Even the Indian shows, Selection Day.
Netflix, I think, is ahead of the game because they're global,
oh my
right?
Goodness.
They understand the global market.
They do.
And everything is becoming much more fluid. People are not just watching things about themselves. They're watching all kinds of content.
They're displacing Hollywood as we know it.
Yeah. A lot of things are just going straight to Netflix now.
Absolutely. And
this is a big plug for Netflix. Maybe they should start the show. There are all these, new communities under the Asian American umbrella that are coming into the U.S. who are, grappling with who they are, what their identity is now that they have a new home. And I think that there's work to be done in facilitating or bridging that gap, perhaps, that the established Asian American communities can do for the emerging kind of newer communities. I don't know what that looks like exactly, but I mean, at CAAM, I feel like we're doing our part in trying to reach out to the communities that are relatively new.
Sure.
And trying to cultivate, younger storytellers, people from the communities themselves who are able to talk about who they are or how they view themselves in their stories, in this new home.
What you shared seems very personal, and also it leans more on the creative side. And it's great. I consider myself a skeptic if I had a point of view, and I will argue that money does make the world go round. We need. So I would how can we bridge the practical side of things? It should be a good investment for someone to put it out there, and also make it entertaining. Have Asian American involvement, and also make damn good film. Because at the end of the day, we're not just competing for. Not in competing, but we're not just putting ourselves out there just for money or representation, but I would argue for legacy. And so along those lines, if you could just, I don't know, if you'd like to share something.
At the end of the day, an authentic, incredible story is what people want to see and consume, right? I mean, people want to see things that are stories that they can, although unique to a certain perspective and experience, is also universal, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't think that's changed. Also, I think what's happening now, at least in documentary film, I feel like instead of just one way to tell a story, I think people are expanding how stories can be told, because there's not just the formulaic PBS television version, but
Yes.
there's all kinds of other versions of storytelling. All our communities, as you know, have traditions in storytelling, right?
Absolutely.
That's how you pass down your histories, that's how you pass down culture, all of those things. So I think slowly but surely, I mean, because it was Anglo-Saxon centric initially when the settlers were in the US, that's been kind of the format of storytelling.
Okay.
And that's how I learned.
Of course.
But I'm also now trying to relearn and backtrack. I'm like, how did my mother, my aunts, how did they communicate our stories to us?
Absolutely.
And expanding that, I guess, that rubric a little bit more and having it be more inclusive and bringing other people in,
Yeah.
how they feel comfortable.
Yeah, being a long-time professional yourself,
Mm-hmm.
I think once you get to a certain point of, you put in your 10,000 hours, that's not about following someone else's intuition, but,
Mm-hmm.
being creative and breaking rules and
Right.
making new rules for us.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. It's been quite serious, so let me just lighten it up a little bit. So, let's talk role models. I mean,
Uh-huh.
what in books, movies, any role models? So
I don't know if role models. I mean,
just like a
I've
source of.
always admired, risk takers, people who take the first step.
Absolutely.
I was telling Lobsang earlier that my documentary project that's on the shelf is about this nun in Nepal who is Newar, who's a Sakya also. But when she was a teenager in the 50s, she ran away from home and walked to Burma.
Oh, wow.
If you can imagine. I mean, doing
goodness.
that now is crazy.
How many miles is that? I was like,
Well, I guess they took a car to the south of Nepal and then to India. And from there, they, trekked through the jungles, basically. Because her passion for studying Buddhism was so strong, and you couldn't do it back then in Nepal. So people like that who showed you what the possibilities are, I think really, I mean, they're very valuable, and that's why I was interested in doing a film about her. Aside from that, I think a writer that I really love is Zadie Smith, who's,
Okay.
British, mixed race.
yes.
But
yes.
I think she kind of has this voice and sensibility that I feel really captures an essence of being very fluid
Yes.
and not of one place or the other, whether it's identity or gender or whatever it is. And, she's a great writer.
Yeah, because like we were talking earlier, and I guess piggybacking from Zadie Smith, as a writer myself, I can see there's a push towards an egalitarian society.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, we're all trying to, we're just not limited to one profession anymore. We can just be multiple people, because what the heck, we are living one life. And we're allowed to be, we can practice all these different things. And so what would you say is, actually, I don't know what the hell I'm going with this. Sapana, I want to thank you so much for your time today. And
It's been a pleasure.
the
Thank
pleasure
you.
is ours. And we're so glad you could make it. If you want to leave a plug for yourself, how can our viewers get in touch with you? Social media, please.
Sure. I mean, if you have a story and you're interested in creating a nonfiction piece for public television, make sure you get in touch with me at CAAM. My email is sapana, SAPANA, at caammedia.org. That's CAAMEDIA.org. Yeah, I'm kind of old school, so email is the best way.
So I'm going to put all the details down there. Don't worry about that, guys. And any last words before we close this?
No, I think this is great. I love the discussion that we had today. I think people from this community, and this community meaning Himalayan diaspora community, doesn't really have a gathering place necessarily to discuss issues of identity, culture, gender, whatever it is. That's, I think, relevant to us. So thank you for starting this, Lobsang and Ngawang. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
And thanks for having me.
Thank you. Alrighty, guys. Thanks so much. Once again, this is the Highland Coffee Talk Show, and you're tuning into our debut episode. Please be kind to us. This is my first time too, and take it easy. Till next time.